So it's almost 2:45. So we want to start this second session of the GARA webinar. Can you hear me? Michel, can you hear me?
Yes, Carl, I can hear you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I hear you well. So my name is Carl Stoll. I'm the science officer of the GARA Executive Committee. And I would like to welcome you to this webinar and to the second session. It's afternoon in Europe and Africa, it's morning in US, and it's evening in parts of Asia. GARA is the Global African Swine Fever Research Alliance, and I suppose most of you know, and this was launched in April 2013 at Plum Island in USA. And the aim of this association is to establish and sustain global research partnerships that will generate scientific knowledge and tools to contribute to prevention, control, and where feasible, eradication of this disease, African swine fever. And one of the activities that GARA organizes is a biannual meeting, scientific meeting. So far, we've had 4 such meetings, and the 5th was scheduled this spring, April in Kampala, Uganda, but due to the COVID situation, it was postponed, firstly until this week, so it would start tomorrow, but now we still have a problematic situation in many parts of the world. So we decided to postpone it again, and it will be held instead in 2021 in August. So all of you are welcome to register and to go to Uganda for that meeting. But in between, we decided to have a webinar to keep the momentum going and to update the scientific community of what is happening as regards African swine fever. So, and today we have an epidemiological session with 3 talks. The first one was this morning, giving an update of the situation in Asia. It was given by Dirk Pfeiffer. That one can be seen recorded. It's available on the GARA website. And now we will have 2 presentations, one from Dr. Michel Dione from ILRI, based in Senegal for the moment. ILRI is the International Livestock Research Institute. And Michel has been working with African swine fever, especially focusing on the smallholder situation in many countries in Africa. So he's been doing that for several years. He was based initially in Uganda, then in Burkina Faso, and now in Senegal. And after this talk, we'll have Arvo Wiltrop, whom I will present when it's his time. And the housekeeping rules is that everyone keeps their mics muted, and we have the question session after the talk, and you can post your questions in the chat. You can do that during the talk if you want. So then we have the questions when we're come to that point, or you can do it afterwards. But I think now it's time for you to start, Michel, and to give your presentation. So the floor is yours, or the Zoom is yours. And one thing before I give you the microphone, Michel, is to thank the University of Pretoria with Armanda Bastos, with Liesel Retief and Deval Kleinhans, who have organized this meeting, or who are hosting it, or they make sure that the technical issues, at least this morning, it worked really, really well. So we hope it will work as well this afternoon also. So please, Michel, you can start.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carl. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night to everyone. I am always happy to share my experience of ASF perspective across a smallholder pig system, especially in East Africa, where I have spent a lot of my time. So this talk will take 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and I will focus on 4 key aspects. I will give an overview of the importance of pig keeping in Africa and the socio-economic impact of ASF. The second component will be about transmission cycles that maintain African swine fever in Africa. and give an overview of distribution of African swine fever outbreaks. Then I will talk about more specifically the pig value chain and relation with African swine fever. That is where I will spend most of my time, because that is the topic which is more relevant to our context. Then I will talk about some options for control of African swine fever in African setting. And then I will share my own lesson learned from intervention we carried out in East Africa on biosecurity, behavioral change in smallholder systems in Uganda. And I will share some of my recommendations for sustainable control of African swine fever. I think all of us, we agree that pigs are very important in Africa. They are important for food security. They are important for prosperity because of income. They are important for health. And also, most importantly, they are important to enhance and support women who mostly are involved in piggery and derive their income from piggery in smallholder systems. According to FAO, pigs and poultry are the fastest growth of livestock in Africa, and the trends are increasing. 30% of households keep pigs in East Africa, and then we estimate about 80% of pig producers are smallholder farmers. So they are typically people who keep small number of pigs, but that small number of pigs are really, really capital and very important for their livelihood. Unfortunately, data on socioeconomics of pigs is very, very scarce and limited in Africa. So we don't have a lot of studies that have addressed the contribution of the pig sector to the economy of Africa, just few of them, and I will highlight some of them in the course of the presentation. So just one example to show you how pig is important at the household level in Kenya and Uganda. This is a study carried out in Kenya and Uganda showing that in a household, the most poor household who earn less than $1.2 per day, according to the poverty stratification, pig keeping contribute to almost 70 to 90% of their cash income, the gross income estimates. So this is really showing that pig keeping in African countries is really important for poor households, for smallholders. It's extremely important. A couple of papers showing the importance of pig, but looking at the perspective of the impact of African swine fever, how African swine fever could impact the pig system. So one paper in the US, which is not really relevant to our study, but of course, just to give some figures, the net benefit of preventing effort of ASF was estimated at $4.5 million US, with a 10 million 10-year period was if considered. So a study in Nigeria of Fasina and al. Showed that the ASF has the potential to create a loss of almost $1 million in a year, considering 122,000 piggery units. And another study in Tanzania also showed that ASF has the potential to cause 84% of loss related to revenue accrued from sale of pigs and pork. This is just showing how ASF is linked to pig production and how ASF can impact the pig production. So talking about socioeconomic impact of ASF, we all know that ASF can cause very, very high mortality up to 100%. And recently, the most recent outbreak in West Africa was in Nigeria, where really it has impacted the whole economy. In Nigeria also, there were cases reported on psychological effect of ASF among some farmers who have lost all our pigs and commit suicide or had some psychological issues. And ASF also has an impact on the economy because of closures of market, following quarantine, failure to restock, and also most importantly, the decrease of income for the farmer. So I'll just jump to the cycle of ASF, how they are maintained in Africa. So we have three transmission cycles of ASF in Africa. The first one is the most ancient cycle, maintained most in East and Southern Africa, where the silver tick cycle is implicated between the common warthog and then the tick. This cycle is described in East and Southeastern Africa. A second cycle also in Eastern and Southeastern Africa is the domestic cycle, but that one now is between the domestic pig and the tick. And in the middle, you have the domestic cycle without an arthropod vector. It depends on the circulation of the virus in the pig population. And this cycle is everywhere. This is the cycle that I will focus more on during my talk and share my experience how we have managed ASF in the domestic cycle, because it's the most common cycle. The other cycle are maintaining the virus, but this one, the domestic cycle, has been implicated in most recent outbreaks in Africa. Okay, sorry, I'm going to the next slide. Okay, so I'm showing here the distribution of African swine fever in Africa. I borrowed this slide, this information from the most recent review of Penrith and al. In 2020. In the map, you will see a bit the origin of the first reports of African swine fever in African countries. The most ever first report was in Kenya in 2021, and then followed by Namibia, it was 20s as well, and then South Africa 28, and then the disease jumped to West Africa to Senegal, and from Senegal started going, spreading to other countries. As you see, the silvatic cycle is mainly in the South Africa and Eastern Africa, while the domestic cycle is in the Central and in the West Africa. So in the box on your right, we have the most recent OIE reports from 2017 to 2020. So Sierra Leone, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Chad, Republic Central of Africa. So of course, this map is not showing all the outbreaks, but it shows how wide is African swine fever distributed in Africa. And almost all countries that have pigs have reported African swine fever in Africa. So as I said before, almost all outbreaks in recent decade and spread in Africa and beyond is due to movement of infected pigs and pork. So the domestic cycle is really playing a crucial role in the spread of African swine fever in Africa. So from there now, I will focus more on how the domestic cycle is related to African swine fever and share my experience, but I will give more examples from East Africa, Uganda, and Kenya, where I have been doing most of my work. So smallholder pig production system, as you know, is as you hear small. So it's characterized by a large informal sector. It's really informal. and most pigs are backyard system kept and managed by women. So they are, either they are confined, tethered, or free range, as you see on these pictures. And the productivity is quite low with a lot of issues, a lot of constraints. The trade, the transport is also a big issue, not regulated. And the slaughter slabs are not regulated, and meat inspection and has issues. And we have a lot of typical smallholders and a few of medium and large scale piggeries. Processing is also very limited. Here I describe a pig value chain in Uganda as we described this, as we developed it in 2015. So a value chain is made of a lot of actors, stakeholders who are linked each other. So you are seeing a linear presentation here, but in fact, it's not really linear. There's a lot of connection between them. It's not really linear as it is here. But what I want to show here is that there's a lot of actors, from the input suppliers, the farmers, collectors, transporters, slaughters, processors, wholesalers, retailers, up to the consumers. So each actor has a role to play, a very critical role to play, and they have been also involved in the transmission, the dissemination of the virus during their activities. So you see highlighted in yellow down, these are the stakeholders who support the value chain, the researchers, developers, the government, who are really very important if you want really to control African swine fever and support the pig system. So as I said, a pig value chain has a lot of constraints. We are focusing on African swine fever, but I think if you go to a farmer today in Uganda or in Kenya, smallholder farmers, ASF may not even be his first problem. His first problem may be feeds or something else. That is to show that the smallholder farmers is within a system that has a lot of interconnection with a lot of other systems, and they have a lot of issues that are not only African swine fever, and they need to address all those issues if they want to address African swine fever. So a study in Kenya showed that household clusters vulnerable to ASF are those that practice free range, at least some of the time. So this is showing how the free range, the practice system influence ASF. And also the opposite is also true, that least vulnerable household are the household that have least number of pig purchase, minimal soil feeding, and a treatment of parasites. So the movements of the traders, the feeding of swill has also an impact on the transmission of ASF. So I mentioned about feeds. I pushed this slide in to really emphasize the issues around feeding, because most of the years I've spent in Uganda, pig has been one of the major issues of the farmers. Besides, before ASF, before market, before anything else. Because if you cannot feed your pig, then you let your pig roam, and if you let your pig roam, then your pig will come in contact with other susceptible pigs, and with wildlife, with bush pig, with the warthog and ticks. So this is just to tell you that there are other important issues that are not only African swine fever for the farmers that we need to address if you want to address African swine fever. So going back to movement of pigs and trade, this is also another study on the left side in Uganda, Cassidy and al., where they have described the social networks, the family network that are very strong exchange among a very close network of families and friends. They exchange a lot of animals, which is good, but also can promote spread of African swine fever. And also in that study, they show that the disease can reach easily each node of the household, if not in the cluster of the household, because of those exchange. On the right side, a study in Uganda showed that also very large networks, farmers who move from one region to another with a large number of pigs, and sorry, not farmers, but traders. And those traders were perceived as the highest risk node by the farmers and even by all value chain actors. They pointed out the trade as the highest risk node for the spread of African swine fever in the country. About pig movements again, another study in Kenya showed that in the absence of outbreak, farmers transact exchange pig in a very limited network, less than 5 kilometers in the community. But if there's an outbreak, so they send pigs farther away, more than 10 kilometers away to the community. So that is what we describe as panic sales also in Uganda and other countries. When there's an outbreak, farmers panic, and then they just share the animals. They sell quickly, very far away to hide. And also the same study showed issues around both service, animal trade across, at the border between Uganda and Kenya. Sorry, I'm not sure if you are seeing very well this graph. It was tight, I could not really do better than this. But here what I want to show, this is a study I did in 2018, where I interviewed farmers, I interviewed traders and vets. And then I look at their perspective on disease reporting and animal movement restriction. So these are the reasons why they would not report disease and they would not comply to movement restrictions. If you look at this graph, the reasons are the same across value chain actors. There are two major things: the fear of losing the customer or the buyer, or the fear of losing the market share, and also lack of knowledge about biosecurity aspects. Those are the two major issues that were reported. For the vets, it was the same, the fear to interrupt the pig business. But they say that if we report, then our business will be interrupted. So protection of business source of income and the lack of knowledge about ASF control measure are the key reasons for lack of disease reporting and compliance to movement control, according to pig value chain actors. So from there now, we tried some intervention. Okay, before reaching to the intervention, so let me show you this slide showing the option for control. So obviously, detection surveillance is key. Using rapid diagnostic test and site test is key. But I will focus my option for control around biosecurity, what we can achieve as, in the smallholder setting for now. I leave diagnosis and surveillance to the experts, but I will share what I have done on this aspect on biosecurity. So biosecurity is relevant to the control of the disease, and we all know that in the absence of the vaccine is only biosecurity if it is implemented well. A study by Barongo in 2016 in Uganda showed that if you implement biosecurity within 14 days of the onset of an epidemic, you can save 70% of death due to that epidemic. Another study in Nigeria also showed the effectiveness of biosecurity in the pig system in Africa. So I will share with you an intervention we did on capacity building and training smallholder farmers on biosecurity, and why smallholder farmers could not improve with time. I will share with you the reasons. So we did a randomized control trial with nearly 1,000 farmers for 3 years in Uganda to test a package of biosecurity that was tailored to their context. And then we use knowledge, attitude, and practice as an indicator for change. So we monitor their knowledge, their attitude, and practices over 3 years. So it was very obvious that training improved knowledge of farmers about good biosecurity practices. So when we implemented the training, the first training we did, we evaluated, and it was straightforward that farmers really were interested into training. They improved their knowledge from the baseline. And what was also very interesting was that we showed that we found that farmers who belong to a group, to a farmer group, to an organization, improve their knowledge higher than other farmers who did not belong to a farm organization. So organizational structure was really positive for improved knowledge. However, no significant change in the farmer attitude and practice was seen after 2 years. Although we had some small, a couple of farmers who were improving, adopting some of the practices that are easy to apply. But when we take the average, there was no improvement on practices and even on the attitude of the farmers over here. We also found that there were a lot of socio-cultural factors that interfered with proper implementation of biosecurity, especially the farm visit. They will tell you, okay, for us, there's no way you can tell to your neighbor, don't come, or to a visitor, don't come to my farm. It's not allowed, you can't stop them. Burial of dead pigs, there were a lot of taboos around burial of dead pigs, if an animal is dead or not. So we did another study, Emil Uma and Al in Uganda, where she ran a model looking at integrating biosecurity and the market, because farmers have a lot of issues also on market access. So we try to see how market and biosecurity are linked. So we ran a model on ASF, applying biosecurity alone as a baseline, and then combining Pig Business Hub, which is the market model, with biosecurity. So looking at this table, you see that when you run biosecurity alone, it even becomes a loss to the farmer. It's minus 6.2% change in the farmer cumulative profit. But when you combine biosecurity and the market, then you see that loss become positive. But still, the traders, the other value chain actors benefit more from the biosecurity, even more than the farmer. The farmer is always the one who benefits less of those interventions. So another aspect around biosecurity, we did a lot of studies looking at how women perceive biosecurity and how they are involved in biosecurity. And we found that they play a key role in application of biosecurity because more than half of the farms are kept by women. So successful training in biosecurity should consider both wife and husband in the household. So there's no way you can leave women behind when you are applying intervention on biosecurity in smallholder system. So the latest study we did was to try to see some channels for ways for channeling information on biosecurity to smallholder farmers. So we did a NARCT also, a randomized controlled trial with 4 arms, where we use the classical training, group training of farmers, participatory training, and also what we call an IVR, interactive voice recording. It's a ICT model where you use the phone to record the information, and farmers can have access directly through their phone. They can have access to information on biosecurity, on whatever they want. So looking at this graph, you see that when you combine the classical training, which is the face-to-face group training, and then the IVR, the phone, you have a higher gain in knowledge. So when you put the IVR alone, it also has a gain compared to the baseline, to doing nothing. if you put the participatory training, the face-to-face training has the higher gain compared to IBR, but combination of both also has the highest gain. So this is saying basically that you can also reach farmers in other channels that are cheaper than the face-to-face training, and it was really impactful. Yeah. So I will quickly share some lessons learned and some recommendations for sustainable control of African swine fever in smallholder system. The first aspect is incentive for behavioral change. I think we all agree that no one wants to lose. No one wants to pay for the loss associated to ASF. So who should pay for it? So you should find who should pay for it, or everyone should pay for it. It should be organized. So I mean, we can explore self-compensation option through farmer business group, because we have seen that the market is an issue. So maybe improving the market and trying to see how the market can contribute to compensating for the loss, that could be an option. Also, because ASF is not a zoonotic disease, and we have come across some communities where they kill the animal and then they eat, they hide and they eat the meat of dead animals. So if we make it very very official or very professional to slaughter a pig positive of ASF, and then to process the meat in a very safe way and then consume the meat instead of the farmer hiding, that also could be important. Certain disease surveillance is extremely important. So I think we should also develop alternative way to disease reporting, because the current reporting system we have is not working well. We must admit that there are a lot of issues on disease reporting. But now, how can we involve the community, the self-regulating system? How can we involve stakeholders and communities in the reporting system? The use of ICT for channeling information, we have shown that it was really helpful because the cost is minimal and the information is faster. We should also explore. And of course, pen-side diagnostic tests are critical if you want to do surveillance. Capacity building is also critical. Improve access to knowledge, information across all value chain actors, not only farmers, but all of them that are involved. And it is also very important to contextualize trainings and capacity building to fit the socio-economic dimension of pig production in those communities. Look at gender norm and relation, because you cannot just start training blindly or writing training from up there and sending to, they will not adopt. So we have to understand the system and the socio-economic dimension. And I said it again, involve women in the training in biosecurity. It's critical if you want to reach smallholder systems with biosecurity message. My final slide will summarize a bit how the pig value chain system should be looked at as a whole, and then linked to market system to develop the entire value chain, and then to improve profit of the pig system in general. So a herd health approach would not just look at African swine fever. A herd health approach would look at the whole system. Feeding is the most important aspect of the pig system. It should be looked at, because if you feed well, then you will not scavenge your animals. Husbandry practices, management skills, reproductive management, and health and biosecurity is in that system. And all this should be linked to market opportunities, because if you produce and you don't have an organized and regulated market, then you cannot make profit. So I think a smallholder system should be looked at as a whole system to be developed, not only looking at ASF alone, but ASF in the smallholder system in general. And finally, a regional approach to ASF is relevant actually, because of the international trade, the regional trade, and also exchanging knowledge across countries. So I think it's also appropriate to to enhance the regional approach, looking at ASF as a transboundary disease, and that has the potential to touch each country and make a lot of negative impact. Thanks a lot, and for listening to me. It was very short, but that was the time I had. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Michel, for a very nice and comprehensive presentation, and not too short. I think it was really good. And we are now 97 participants from different parts of the world, which also is very nice. And thanks to all of you. So now we have time for a few questions, and we have one from Thais Tobias. If you want to pose it yourself, or you can do that. Otherwise, I will read it. I will read it. So it's very interesting randomized controlled trial on knowledge, attitude, and practices. How were farmers recruited? In our experience, for another topic, farmers with little desire to change will not change in behavior. So what do you say, Michel?
Yes. Okay, how were the farmer recruited? I will not say a lot of, because of time, maybe I will ask that participant to look at the paper to read more details on how we recruited, but we tried as much as possible to avoid spillover, to observe the rules of an RCT. Of course, it's very difficult to implement an RCT in our settings, but yeah, we tried as much as we could to avoid spillover. But farmers participated. It was not by force, and then those who could not participate and could be part of the study for the 3 years. And yeah, so as I said, the knowledge is improved, that is clear. But now the attitude and the practices, as I said, is related to the lack of incentive to change. So we did not provide that incentive to change in our training. So we provide just the knowledge to see if because they've been complaining about lack of knowledge in all our studies. We don't have knowledge. We don't say, okay, let's see if they have knowledge. Will they change? And that's what we wanted to demonstrate. And they did not. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. So then we have from Patrick Bastiansen. Is there a link between ASF outbreaks and the rampant resistance against acaricides in Uganda? So maybe that comes from the risk factor analysis, where you saw association with the use of antiparasitic substances.
Okay, that we did not explore further. It's a study done by ILRI in Uganda and Kenya, and they found that the treatment was associated, but we did not investigate further to see why and how. I think it could be an interesting topic to investigate further. But that was just observational. Yeah.
I know in some of the studies that we have conducted in Uganda on African swine fever, where we have investigated the disease, we have given antiparasitic treatments after the visit, and these have been infected farms. So maybe we can cause an association through that practice. There is a question from Dennis Mohanji. He raises his hand, but I can't see the... here it says, yeah. Concerning the safe slaughter of ASF positive pigs, what is the practicality of slaughter and the acceptability?
Yes, this is not something we have tried yet. These are thoughts, because if farmers are hiding to eat those pigs, why don't we organize them to eat those pigs in a safe way that protect others? Because it's not a zoonotic disease. So in the same way as organizing slaughter slab or slaughter areas that meet regulation for disease not to spill over out of slaughter slabs. So those are thoughts, because we have come across farmers who really, when the pig is sick, either they sell it or they slaughter, and then they distribute the meat for eating. So if they know that by distributing that meat, they are spreading the disease. It's better maybe if they can organize themselves and then they have the right to slaughter and then to eat it. So it's something that could be looked at.
Thank you. So we have from Hans, thanks for the presentation. What about antiviral drugs? Do you think that is a possible way for ASF prevention or control?
Antiretroviral drugs?
Yeah, antiviral drugs.
Antiviral drugs.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm not an expert in therapeutics of ASF. Maybe we'll have a session on that on I don't know which session will address that, Carl. Do you have some?
I would guess that maybe in some of the presentations, yes, tomorrow you can post that question when we talk about vaccines and therapeutical prevention.
Yeah.
From Charles Masembe, acaricides are mostly used in cattle keepers and less so among pig keepers. So I would say the link is not direct. No, maybe true.
Right.
So from Patrick Bisimwa in DRC, how can you advise to local government to do for farmers so that they may be able to record regularly ASF cases? So it's about reporting. How could they improve reporting rates?
I think reporting is not only for ASF, but any transboundary disease. In general, we have our government have issues. I mean, about reporting. So if you go to the OIE website, you will never see the most recent outbreaks and have come across a list of disease outbreak for 10 years for a country. But when I looked at it, you will see 1,000 outbreaks, but when you go to the OIE site, you see 20, 40 outbreaks. So there's a mismatch between what is reported locally and what is sent to the OIE. So there's a lot of, and I suspect there's a lot of suspected cases that are thought to be real cases, but are not, or cases that are associated to other diseases like PRRS or other disease. But so that is, reporting is a general issue. And I think for the case of ASF, which is a disease that has an impact directly to the farmer, I think the community should be involved. Mm. So convincing the communities to report is critical. Yeah. So because the government cannot access at real time, cannot access farmers because of the system, but community incentive, maybe community change of behavior is really critical here to help the government in the reporting system.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Erika Chenet from my institute. Thank you for a very good presentation. I would just like to comment on the behavioral change. I think it is very important to study the background reasons for the risk behaviors, such as livelihood struggles, making trade in sick pigs necessary, and not only claim that farmers did not change the behavior.
Yes. So I think we have done a lot of, before that RCT, we spent 6 years studying the pig value chain in Uganda since 2011. So the RCT was a result of what we collected from the field, because it came across all the results that farmers lacked of knowledge on biosecurity right from the beginning. So we said, okay, let's then give them knowledge, and then we test. What happens. So we have a good understanding of the system before we biosecurity. And also, I totally agree that understanding if you want to implement biosecurity in a very successful way in smallholder pig systems. Mm. Yeah.
And maybe the last one from Sanna concerning antivirals. So there are probably food safety issues with antivirals. So not an obvious immediate solution, even if they were effective and affordable. And to date, we don't know if they are effective. There have been some studies, but not anything that I've seen that is very, very promising. So we have 1 more minute if there is a last question. Otherwise, I think again we should thank Michel and to the team in Pretoria for setting up the webinar, and to the audience and for all the questions. I think it's incredible how well this works with the Zoom and everything, sound. Actually, no problem. So thank you very much. Most of you maybe will stay for the next session, but thanks meanwhile to Michel.
Thank you. Thank you too, Carl. Bye.
Bye. Now,